Deshawn Carter walked through LaGuardia Airport with the calm precision of someone used to tight schedules and tight scrutiny. His polished shoes tapped quietly across the floor as he made his way toward Gate 34. His outfit was simple yet sharp. Dark tailored slacks, a crisp white shirt, and a navy overcoat that whispered power rather than shouted it. He carried no briefcase, just a phone in his hand and a quiet expression that never needed to explain itself. He stopped at the boarding line for Horizon Atlantic's Flight 7720, first class section. The flight attendant on duty, Lauren Preston, glanced up, smiled briefly, then paused when she looked again. Deshawn handed over his boarding pass and ID with steady hands. Her smile faded. Her brows furrowed. "Sir, are you sure this is your ticket?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. Deshawn gave a small nod. "It is." She looked at the documents again, then leaned to her side, whispering something to a woman in a blazer who had just arrived. Amanda Collins, the terminal manager. Amanda stepped forward, her tone clipped and professional, but cold. "We've had some incidents lately," she said. "Do you mind if we verify this card and your identity again?" Deshawn didn't move. "You've already scanned both." Amanda's smile was taut. "Yes, but just a quick check. Protocol." Passengers behind him began to glance forward, wondering what the delay was. Lauren added in a lowered voice, "It's just, sometimes people get a hold of these kinds of tickets, in unusual ways." Deshawn didn't flinch. "Unusual how?" Neither answered. Amanda signaled to the gate computer again. He stood still, aware of the eyes now lingering longer than comfort allowed. He could hear a man coughing behind him, a woman rustling a newspaper. The silence at the gate grew louder with each second. Lauren looked him over once more, this time less like a professional, more like a detective. Her eyes scanned his wrist, his shoes, his skin. Her suspicion was not concealed. Amanda whispered something into her headset. Deshawn checked his watch. "Sir," Amanda said, louder this time, "this will just take a moment. Please step aside." "I'd rather not," Deshawn replied, "unless you can tell me what the issue is." A pause. Amanda gave a thin smile. "Just verifying everything's in order." Behind him, a younger woman with curly hair, Zoe Ramirez, had already taken out her phone and began recording silently. Deshawn, still holding his calm like armor, looked past Amanda to the jet bridge. He could almost feel the seat that had his name on it waiting just beyond. But the doubts of those before him were becoming an invisible wall. The scanner beeped red again. Lauren's voice dropped low. "Maybe call security." Amanda nodded slowly. Deshawn's jaw tensed, just slightly. The gate had become a spotlight, and no one, yet, knew who they were trying to keep off the plane. The first officer to respond was tall, built like a wall, with a radio on his shoulder and mirrored sunglasses that stayed on even indoors. He approached with practiced authority and a measured voice, the kind that didn't ask questions, it gave commands. "Sir, we've received a report. Please step away from the boarding area." Deshawn's voice was even. "I'm a confirmed first-class passenger on this flight." Amanda chimed in quickly. He presented a ticket and a card. "But something doesn't feel right." The officer looked at the boarding pass, then at Deshawn. "Do you have another form of ID?" Zoe Ramirez, standing nearby, tightened her grip on her phone. She was still live. Her fingers hovered over the screen, adjusting the focus as she whispered to her audience. "They're detaining him. He hasn't raised his voice. He hasn't resisted. And they're still, wow. This is happening in 2025. Inside the terminal, murmurs began to stir. One man whispered, "Why don't they just let him board?" Another woman clutched her purse tighter and looked away. No one stepped forward. No one asked questions. Only Zoe kept filming. A new figure appeared, Captain Greg Dalton, the pilot of Flight 7720. He wore a stiff white shirt, golden stripes on his shoulders, and the swagger of someone used to being obeyed. "What's the holdup here?" he asked Lauren. She gestured toward Deshawn. "Possible fraudulent ticket, sir." Dalton looked Deshawn up and down, then gave a soft chuckle. This the guy holding up my flight? Deshawn met his eyes. That would depend on how you choose to handle it. The captain's tone shifted, now loud enough for everyone to hear. Sir, if you can't verify your identity properly, you'll need to step back and let real passengers through. A few gasps followed. Deshawn said nothing. Zoe whispered into her phone. He just said, real passengers. You all heard that, right? The officer stepped closer to Deshawn. We're asking nicely, sir. I'm standing on the boarding dot. I'm not yelling. I'm not moving. I'm simply waiting for you to let me on the plane I paid for, Deshawn said, quietly. But it didn't matter. Authority didn't need justification here, it only needed numbers. And now, with the captain present, Lauren, Amanda, and airport security all siding with assumption over facts, Deshawn found himself surrounded. The terminal manager called another officer. Passengers were watching. Phones were out. But none as bold as Zoe, whose live stream now had over 10,000 viewers and climbing. Comments poured in. Let the man fly. This is racist. Don't stop streaming. Deshawn pulled out his phone, his second one this time, and typed something quickly. Then he placed it back in his coat pocket and looked straight ahead. Dalton spoke again. Look, either step away now, or we'll remove you. Zoe's camera caught Deshawn blinking once, slowly, before answering, do what you have to do. As two more officers arrived, the gate alarm chimed. The flight's departure time had passed. Deshawn stood still. The plane stayed parked. No one yet realized this wasn't a man trying to force his way on board. It was a man deciding how far he was willing to go. Zoe Ramirez's phone buzzed nonstop as notifications flooded her screen. Viewers were screen recording, resharing, and reposting clips from her live stream faster than she could read the comments. Hashtags began to spread. Hashtag Horizon Gate. Hashtag Let Him Board. Hashtag Gate 34 Racism. Her voice trembled as she whispered, over 20,000 now. This is real time. Share it. Do not let this disappear. Inside Gate 34, tension thickened. The flight had now missed its scheduled departure by 12 minutes. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether to complain or stay quiet. Children grew restless. Businessmen checked their watches, irritated. But no one moved past Deshawn Carter, who remained frozen like a pillar. Security held their position, waiting for orders. Amanda Collins made another call on her radio, her voice growing anxious as she tried to explain the delay to her superiors. Captain Dalton stood nearby with arms crossed, occasionally sighing loudly as if to perform his own frustration. Deshawn pulled out his second phone once more, this time tapping the screen with deliberate speed. His thumb glided across menus with muscle memory, bypassing public apps and reaching into something deeper. The app displayed the Horizon Atlantic insignia. He unlocked the secure executive dashboard. A red button appeared at the top of the screen. Executive Override, Flight Control Access. Without fanfare, without a word, Deshawn tapped it. He scrolled through a menu of active flights. In a few more gestures, his command was submitted. Command confirmed. Ground all departures. Status. In progress. From the outside, nothing had changed. But inside Horizon's operations network, a silent shockwave began. Planes on the runway began receiving alerts to hold position. Flight paths were rechecked. Terminal logs flashed with errors. Schedulers from other cities started calling their LaGuardia counterparts. At that very moment, in a control center 5 states away, a technician looked up from his monitor and muttered, "Why are we grounding all Horizon flights?" Back at Gate 34, no one yet knew. Zoe's viewership passed 35,000. On the screen, one viewer typed, "This guy's calm because he's someone powerful." Another replied, "Nah. They'd never treat someone important like that." Deshawn's face gave nothing away. His phone vibrated in his coat. He checked it briefly. One message. Override received. Full lockdown initiated. Amanda hung up her radio and approached again. "Sir, we're still verifying your credentials. But please understand this delay is for your own protection." He said nothing. Dalton stepped forward. I have a job to do, and you're holding up my crew. This isn't about race. It's about security. Zoe's voice, still live, spoke clearly now. If this isn't about race, why does it always happen to people who look like him? At that moment, a nearby monitor switched to show a list of delayed Horizon flights. More began appearing by the second. Gate agents at adjacent terminals turned toward Gate 34. One of them asked, "Why are we grounding? Is there an alert?" A strange ripple moved through the terminal. Still, Deshawn stood unmoved. Calm. Intentional. 12 minutes ago, they saw him as someone suspicious. Now the entire airport was reacting to his touch. And the world was starting to realize that the man they tried to humiliate wasn't just a passenger. He was the power behind the planes. Terminal screens began to flicker with updates. Across LaGuardia, boarding gates for Horizon Atlantic lit up with a word no one wanted to see. Delayed. Flight after flight. Gate after gate. Confused passengers looked around, murmuring complaints. Some took out their phones to call family. Others rushed to flight information displays. None of them knew that the source of the disruption was standing silently at Gate 34. Deshawn Carter had not moved. Amanda Collins stepped away to take another call. Her voice had shifted from confident to panicked. I don't know what's happening. The system's locking me out. Every Horizon flight is being delayed. It's not just us. Captain Dalton's jaw tightened. He turned toward Lauren Preston, who had grown pale. Did he say who he works for? No, Lauren whispered. He just stood there. Dalton pulled out his pilot badge and approached Deshawn again. Look, whoever you are, whatever you think you're doing, this is now interfering with national air traffic. You'll be in serious trouble. Deshawn looked at him with steady eyes. I'm aware. From the side, Zoe Ramirez kept her camera steady. 43,000 watching, she whispered to herself. It's spreading to Twitter. Even reporters are messaging me. Just then, 3 agents from airport operations arrived in matching black blazers. They were followed by a Horizon Atlantic district supervisor, a man in his 50s who looked like he hadn't left a boardroom in years. His face was tight with worry. Where is he? The supervisor asked. Amanda pointed toward Deshawn. That's him. He's been holding this gate and we think he triggered something in the system. The supervisor's face drained of color. He walked toward Deshawn quickly, not with authority, but with recognition. Mr. Carter? He asked quietly. Deshawn gave a small nod. Hello, Alan. Amanda blinked. You know him. The supervisor turned slowly toward her. This man is Deshawn Carter. He's the chief executive officer of Horizon Atlantic. Silence cracked across the gate. Zoe gasped. Her voice picked up clearly in the live stream. He's the CEO? Amanda took a half step back. Lauren's hand dropped from the gate scanner. Captain Dalton's face flushed red. The terminal, once filled with quiet suspicion, now drowned in confusion and disbelief. I'd like a private room, Deshawn said calmly. Now. The supervisor nodded instantly. Right away. Deshawn turned to the officers who had been flanking him. You may step back. They obeyed. Zoe followed at a distance as Deshawn walked toward a restricted terminal lounge, escorted by Alan and airport officials. The stream caught a glimpse of passengers standing up from their seats, stunned and whispering to one another. No longer a suspect. No longer invisible. The man they tried to remove had just grounded every plane they needed to fly. And the fallout was only beginning. The private terminal lounge was quiet, insulated from the chaos outside. Thick carpet muted every footstep. Deshawn Carter stood at the head of a sleek glass table, surrounded by stunned airport officials and senior Horizon Atlantic staff. His calm demeanor had not changed, but now the room saw it differently. It was not the calm of a man trying to prove something. It was the calm of a man who already had. Alan, the district supervisor, took a deep breath. Mr. Carter, I had no idea. If we'd known you were traveling today, we would have. Deshawn raised a hand, silencing him. That's the problem. You shouldn't have to know who someone is to treat them with dignity. No one spoke. Lauren Preston stood just inside the door, her posture rigid. Amanda Collins entered behind her, face pale, hands fidgeting. Captain Greg Dalton arrived last, his expression unreadable. Deshawn gestured to a chair. "Have a seat." No one dared to disobey. He tapped on his phone, pulling up internal flight logs and system activity. "I grounded every Horizon flight in the country with 3 commands. That action caused an estimated $1.8 million in financial disruption in under 15 minutes. That's not counting reputational damage." Amanda swallowed hard. Lauren looked at the floor. Captain Dalton cleared his throat. "I think there's a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Deshawn cut in. "You questioned my identity without cause. You humiliated me in front of passengers. You escalated the situation instead of de-escalating it. And worse, you did it not because I acted out, but because I didn't look like what you expected a first-class passenger to look like." Zoe Ramirez stood quietly near the doorway, her phone finally lowered, but her presence unchanged. She wasn't recording now, but her eyes held every word. Deshawn continued, "Let me be clear. This isn't just about me. This is about a culture. One that profiles. One that excuses bias under the disguise of protocol. And one that refuses to see its reflection in the mirror." He turned to Alan. "As CEO, I am making the following decisions." The room froze. He looked at Dalton. "Captain Greg Dalton, your employment with Horizon Atlantic is terminated, effective immediately." Dalton's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Deshawn turned to Amanda. "Amanda Collins, you are suspended without pay pending internal review and formal apology training." Amanda looked like she had forgotten how to breathe. Finally, he faced Lauren. "Lauren Preston, you are placed on 3-month probation. You will undergo mandatory bias training and participate in Horizon's public equity initiative." Lauren nodded, eyes shining but lips sealed. Deshawn exhaled slowly. This was never about revenge. But accountability is not optional. Alan said quietly, "Is there anything else we should prepare for?" Deshawn looked up. Yes, this was just the beginning. He walked out of the room, shoulders straight, leaving silence in his wake. Behind him, the 3 staff members sat in still shame, surrounded not by angry shouting, but by the heavy weight of consequence. Outside the lounge, passengers were still waiting. But the story had already taken flight. By the next morning, Deshawn Carter's name was on every news outlet in the country. The footage from Gate 34 had been clipped, analyzed, and replayed across social media platforms, late-night segments, and morning headlines. But what mattered most wasn't the viral moment, it was what came after. Deshawn returned to LaGuardia not with vengeance, but with a proposal. One that would shake the roots of how the airport, and perhaps the entire aviation industry, dealt with bias. In a high-level meeting with airport executives, Deshawn laid out his plan. His voice was steady, not raised. Each point was delivered with surgical clarity. "First," he began, "mandatory bias training for all gate agents, flight attendants, and management staff. No exceptions." One executive adjusted his tie. "That's quite an investment," Deshawn replied, "which is why Horizon Atlantic will cover 50% of the cost. We don't just demand change, we fund it." "Second," he continued, "security officers at LaGuardia will be equipped with body cameras, not as surveillance tools but as accountability devices." A silence spread across the room. "Third, we implement an anonymous reporting app. If a traveler experiences discrimination, they shouldn't have to fear retaliation. Reports will go straight to a third-party auditor." "And fourth," Deshawn said, pausing to make eye contact with each person at the table, "quarterly diversity audits will become a fixture of this airport's operations. The results will be public." An older board member leaned forward. "And if we decline?" Deshawn didn't smile. "Then Horizon Atlantic begins the process of relocating our operations from LaGuardia to competing airports within the region." No one responded. He added, "And I won't need a press conference to announce it. The public is already watching." The threat wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. Everyone in the room understood the gravity. Losing Horizon Atlantic meant losing tens of millions in annual revenue, tens of thousands of travelers, and the trust of a very loud, very informed public. One executive finally spoke. "We'll need to take this to the full board." "You have 72 hours, Deshawn said. "Then we begin moving gates." The meeting adjourned. Later that day, Zoe Ramirez sat at a small desk inside Horizon Atlantic's communications office. She had been personally invited by Deshawn for a conversation. What she expected to be a quick meeting turned into a job offer. "Director of Social Impact," Deshawn said. "You exposed the problem. Now I want you to help shape the solution." Zoe blinked. "I'm still a student." He smiled. "Good. That means you haven't learned how to be silent yet." She accepted. Back at LaGuardia, the board didn't wait 72 hours. They responded in 24. Deshawn's entire proposal was approved without revision. What had started as a confrontation at a boarding gate had now become a multi-million-dollar transformation plan for one of the busiest airports in America. And the turbulence had only just begun to clear. 6 weeks later, the difference at LaGuardia was visible from the moment travelers stepped into the terminal. Uniformed staff now wore discreet body cameras clipped to their vests. Posters lined the walls in multiple languages. "Respect every passenger. Report every incident." QR codes below the message led directly to the new anonymous reporting app. In the training wing, groups of airline employees sat in rooms with quiet tension and open notebooks. Bias training was not a formality anymore, it was policy. Participation was mandatory, and everyone knew it. Those who failed to complete the modules were placed on leave. No more warnings. No more quiet passes. Lauren Preston sat in one such session, eyes focused on the screen. She no longer wore her gate agent uniform. Now she listened, reflected, and answered every question with intention. She had changed not by force but by clarity. Across the airport, Amanda Collins remained suspended. She was undergoing personal coaching as part of her reinstatement process, under the direct watch of Horizon's new internal equity team. Her office had been reassigned. Her old badge no longer opened executive doors. Meanwhile, Horizon Atlantic's reputation, once dented by #HorizonGate, was recovering faster than anyone expected. Headlines praised the airline's decisive leadership. Investors returned with confidence. The company's stock not only rebounded, it reached an all-time high. Reporters interviewed passengers who noticed the shift. A grandmother from Atlanta commented, "The energy feels different, more respectful." A businessman from Seattle added, "I've flown Horizon for years. This is the first time I've felt seen." And behind many of these changes stood Zoe Ramirez. Now formally installed as Director of Social Impact, Zoe coordinated monthly reports on staff behavior, social feedback, and diversity benchmarks. She created a new division of community outreach, partnering with universities, nonprofits, and local artists to make airports more inclusive. Not just operational, but human. In her small glass office overlooking the tarmac, she pinned a photo to the wall. It was a screenshot from her live stream, frozen at the moment Deshawn Carter stood silently at gate 34. She had printed the caption below. Change didn't walk in shouting. It waited. Then it acted. She looked at it every morning. On the runway outside, Horizon planes lifted into the sky, each one carrying a little more weight and a lot more purpose. Inside the CEO's office, Deshawn reviewed the next phase of policy changes. But he paused to glance out the window and watch a flight take off. No press conference. No applause. Just progress. Steady. Quiet. Real. 1 year later, the events at Gate 34 had become more than a trending hashtag. They were now a case study taught at top business schools across the country. In classrooms from Stanford to Howard, students analyzed how a silent confrontation at an airport gate transformed into one of the most sweeping anti-bias reforms in the aviation industry. The story wasn't framed as a scandal. It was framed as leadership. Deshawn Carter stood on the stage of a packed auditorium in Boston, delivering a keynote at a global leadership summit. He wore the same navy overcoat from that morning at LaGuardia. Not because he needed the reminder, but because symbols matter when words fade. He didn't speak about revenge or retribution. Instead, he spoke about system redesign, about how dignity is not a reward given by uniformed strangers, but a right carried silently by everyone. He spoke about the cost of inaction and the wealth hidden in empathy. When the standing ovation ended, Deshawn stepped down from the podium and shook hands with professors, executives, and students alike. One young woman said, "You made it possible for someone like me to be seen." He simply smiled and replied, "Now go make someone else visible." Back in New York, LaGuardia Airport displayed a new digital wall in the main terminal. It didn't feature ads or weather reports. It featured data, live statistics showing traveler satisfaction, diversity progress, and public feedback. For the first time, passengers could see the airport holding itself accountable. Under that display, a bronze plaque had been mounted. It read, "In honor of those who refused to board silently." Zoe Ramirez stood near it one afternoon, watching people stop and read. Some took photos. Others nodded to themselves. She now led a growing team focused on global airport reform, sharing Horizon Atlantic's model with other airlines around the world. Her voice, once a whisper on a live stream, now echoed in boardrooms. Her phone buzzed. A message from Deshawn. "Board meeting at noon. Bring the new proposal. Let's keep moving." She smiled and typed back, "On it." And yes, we keep moving. The camera feeds, the audits, the training sessions, the culture, they all continued. Because Deshawn Carter hadn't grounded flights to make a statement. He had grounded them to take off again on a better path. No one called him a hero. He didn't need them to, because he had become something far rarer. A man who changed the rules by refusing to play the game as it was written. A leader who never raised his voice, but made sure the world listened anyway.